This is Derek from ClassicGameRoom.com, and along with ramen noodles and the cute girl in English class, this is one of the 3 things I remember from my freshman year at college. This is the Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and as throngs of passionate forum dwellers and blog commenters feverishly type until their fingertips go numb, this is one of Nintendo's most complex and conceptually ambitious offerings to date. It would be fair, of course, to question what exactly is so complicated about a Zelda game. Like Nintendo's Mario and Metroid franchises, The Legend of Zelda has followed the same basic blueprint since 1986. Solve the dungeon, defeat the boss, rinse, wash, and repeat until you finally save the princess. Now, Majora's Mask doesn't redraw the Zelda schematic completely, but it does make a few key revisions. This is still very much a Legend of Zelda, but it's a twisted and nightmarish legend. A dark and kaleidoscopic take on one of gaming's most beloved franchises. Picking up in the aftermath of 1998's Ocarina of Time, we rejoin a very different Link than the hero we remember. The boy has fulfilled his destiny and is now the legend he was born to be, but his heroic radiance is dimmed by loneliness. Fresh off his epic quest in Ocarina, a solemn Link mounts his horse and leaves Hyrule with a gentle trot and a lowered head, embarking on a deeply personal quest not for adventure, but for companionship. Of course, it just wouldn't be a video game if everything went according to plan, and Link's journey quickly takes an unexpected turn. We soon find ourselves in Termina, a strange land best described as an image of Hyrule contorted by a funhouse mirror. The people, the faces, the places, there's something very familiar about Termina, but it also feels unnervingly alien. And it's precisely that interesting dynamic between the familiar and the foreign that makes Majora's Mask such a compelling experience. Well, that and the impending doom of the roof collapsing. Only in this case, the roof revolves around the planet and affects sea levels, and scowls at you. Majora's Mask is basically what you'd get if you mixed The Legend of Zelda with the classic Bill Murray movie Groundhog Day. Link relives the same 3 days in perpetuity, a 72-hour cycle in which he must save Termina from imminent lunar doom, solve the personal problems of its troubled citizens, and of course, score with Andy McDowell. Fail to complete these tasks before time runs out, and the falling moon finally makes its devastating impact, and it's quite literally lights out for Termina. The central element of Majora's Mask is time, and time is absolutely crucial. Players always have to be aware of that incessant tick-tock, tick-tock. And that creates an overwhelming sense of tension which pervades the entire experience, and it really makes Majora's Mask feel like a race against time. It may not sound like a Zelda game, but that's the beauty of it. Majora's Mask retains the traditional feeling of its namesake franchise, but that serves merely as the foundation for something much bigger and, quite frankly, much smarter. You'll be exploring temples and dungeons and solving puzzles and slicing up enemies with your sword as you would in any Zelda game, but you'll be doing these things through a very different lens, in a very different context, and often in very different bodies. If you've ever wondered what it would be like to play a Zelda game as a rock-eating beast instead of a skilled young swordsman, wonder no more. Majora's Mask finally offers the answer. As the subtitle suggests, the game's masks play a central role in both its narrative and its gameplay. some of which can actually transform Link into the beings they portray. Each of the game's dozens of masks has an important use, and some are absolutely critical. You won't be able to complete certain dungeons and temples without them, let alone beat the game or escape Punxsutawney. Completely changing Link, and therefore his abilities, gives Majora's Mask even more depth, and it makes some of the puzzles and gameplay much more clever and fresh, all the while retaining the feel of a Zelda game, which is a very impressive marriage of concept and design. Despite my adoration and use of superlatives, Majora's Mask just isn't the same seminal experience Zelda heavyweights like Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past were, for a few reasons. Although they've been a major component of the Zelda franchise for years, Majora's Mask focuses more on side quests than perhaps any Zelda game to date. And as engaging and important to the overall experience as some of them are, especially the awesome Anju and Kafei love story side quest, some folks understandably just aren't into doing favors for strangers. And if side quests aren't your thing, much of Majora's inescapable charm may in fact escape you. Also, the game's tone and mood are much darker than usual for a Zelda game, and although some will embrace the change of pace, some might be put off by just how different Majora's Mask can be. And then there's the issue of story. Now, Majora's Mask tells a dark, smart, and often genuinely tragic tale, one of much greater depth and maturity than you'd expect from this series, but it's just not as epic as past Zelda games. If Ocarina of Time were a Hollywood blockbuster, Majora's Mask is like one of those independent films that win awards for writing and direction, but that like 12 people actually go see. And that's actually a pretty good analogy for Majora's Mask. It's sold fewer copies than any of the last 4 Zelda console games, and thanks to its surreal art and sound design, it sticks out like an artsy-fartsy indie flick at a screening of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Still, any Nintendo or Zelda fan who missed this cult classic when it released in 2000 should definitely check it out now. You can find the cartridge on eBay via classicgameroom.com, or you can download it on the Wii's Virtual Console. Either way, you'll be treating yourself to one of Nintendo's most engaging, innovative, and underappreciated games of the last decade. A remarkable interactive treat in which time travel is possible without going 88 miles an hour.